Shabbat, Perek Tet Vav, Mishnah Gimel. Third Mishnah in the 15th chapter of Shabbat. Today we're going to talk about a really interesting halacha called Kipul Kelim, or Lekapel means to fold. Folding clothing on Shabbat. And it's clear from the way the Mishnah describes it, that the folding of a cloth, and remember they wore like shawls, or they wore these these Greek Roman garments, and the folding, I guess, was a very important part of it, and it was considered an important part of maintaining the beged, maintaining the garment. So therefore, the Mishnah says, the question is, are you allowed to fold clothing on Shabbat? The Mishnah says, "Mekaplin et kelim." You can fold kelim. Kelim means vessels, but in this context, the vessel is a kind of clothing. So you can fold your clothing. Afilu arba'a v'chamisha pamim, even 4 or 5 times, i.e., on Shabbat. Umitzi'in et hamitot milele Shabbat. The Shabbat. Mitzi'in et hamitot means you want to make the beds. They didn't have beds in their bedrooms. They used their beds in their rooms, and then they set them up in order to use the room for the rest of the day. So if after I wake up in the morning, I can make my bed, milele Shabbat the Shabbat. Avalami Shabbat the Motzei Shabbat, but I can't reset the bed from Motzei Shabbat, from Shabbat to Motzei Shabbat. And the reason is because you're not allowed to do what's called hachana from Shabbat to Motzei Shabbat. And that's the reason, by the way, that many people after Sudah Shlishi, when you're done eating, you don't start cleaning up right away because you're cleaning up for later. You're cleaning up for Motzei Shabbat. But from Shabbat itself, from lunch, for example, I want the table clean to use on Shabbat itself. Let's go back to the idea of mekaplim et kelim, because the Bar Terura quotes the Gemara. The Gemara Terura says, "Begadim sheposhtan," clothing, garments that you have unfolded, mekaplan, you can fold them, afilu arba'a v'chamisha pamim, 4 or 5 times, kedei lachzor ulelovsham bu bayom, in order to go and rewear them that day. Now, this is from the Gemara. It's quoting the Gemara. V'lo shanu ela be'adam echad. That's only if you're folding it on by yourself, one person. But 2 people can't do it. Shnir'im kimitaknim. I guess back in their times, it was a 2-man job, folding in a very specific way. Sometimes if I'm folding like a blanket, a very large garment, you ever try to fold a sheet, big sheets, like a king-size sheet, it's a 2-man job. So if you do it on your own, you do like a bad job. But if 2 people do it, you do a good job. It's very interesting to note. I'm curious to know, how big if they were wearing this Roman garment, how big it really was. That which we said is permitted. New clothing that are hard, that are stiff, and they don't wrinkle. But older garments, and this is an important point, I'm going to show you the halakha. Kipulam mitaknam. They're folding them, is litakenutam, is improving them, is fixing them. Tfei umichze kimitaknein. And it looks like you're fixing them. Okay? And so there's this idea in halakha that a lot of people are not aware of, that folding garments can be in a way of fixing them, that Chazal made a gzeira on. So just show you the Pnei Halacha from Melamed. Let's make this small enough that you're able to see it. Okay? Let's make it smaller. Here we go. This is from Pnei Halacha of Harav Melamed. Here we go. Okay? And he talks about this Rav Melamed. Pnei Halacha. You can buy it in your local bookstore, but it's also, the entire thing is available online. Rav Melamed is amazing. He talks about the fact that Asur Chachamim lekapel begadim b'Shabbat ba'ofen meduyak. The sages forbade the folding of clothing in an exact way. Why? Mishum shakipul shomer al tzivyono shel habeged. The folding, it guards, or it retains the aspect of the cloth, of the garment. Okay? Shiyunach yashar al haguf v'lo yitkamet. That it will remain straight on the body and it won't become wrinkled. And if you think about it, that's the way we do it. I think we do this in 2 specific times on Shabbat, 2 kinds of clothes. 1, if you have pants that don't crease, and 2 is tallit on Shabbat. So we're not going to read the whole thing. You can look it up if you want to. This is the address, or just search for Kipul Tallit B'Shabbat Pnei Halacha. That's what I searched for. Okay, so he brings both opinions. Some opinions say it's asur. The simple explanation of the Gemara is that it's asur. He brings Rishonim that say that our folding is not the folding that they had, it's not professional, which is logical. And he brings the middle dayah. He says, Ulidata memutzat, the middle row, the shidat rov poskim, most poskim say, mutar lekapel et hatalit shelo kekapelei harishonim. You can fold your tallit on Shabbat, but you shouldn't fold it like its original folds. I must say, many people, myself included, were very careful when we have our tallit. You fold it on the exact fold the way you got it, and then it folds separately, nicely and perfectly. So that's why personally, when I fold my tallit on Shabbat morning, I do fold it up, but I fold it in the unexact fold. And then after Shabbat, I take it out and refold it again because I need that perfect fold. Plus, when I refold my tallit on Shabbat morning, that's a great opportunity to check your tzitzit in order to make sure that they're tied properly. When I refold my tallit on Motzei Shabbat, that's the time to check your tzitzit because it becomes untied, and you're not allowed to tighten tzitzit on Shabbat morning. And for me, my tallit I use only on Shabbat itself. I have a Shabbat tallit, and so it's really important to check the tallit and check the tzitzit when it's not Shabbat, so you can retie it, because then you have real issues of kshira. All right, we'll end there with a little side on the tallit, but I think that is relevant. Okay, and then we talked about mitzi'ina to mitot, making the beds from Leilei Shabbat to Shabbat, but you can't do it from Shabbat to Motzei Shabbat. Rabbi Yishmael says, mekaplina ta kelim, you are allowed to fold kelim, fold clothing, umitzi'ina ta mitot, and you're allowed to make the beds, miyom kippurim the Shabbat. Let's say Yom Kippur was on Erev Shabbat, on Friday, and you have to get ready for Shabbat. So if I use the beds or I use my tallit on Yom Kippur, can I fold it for Shabbat? Now, just to point out, in the modern calendar, this is impossible. There's never Yom Kippur on Friday or Sunday. But in their times, they did have Yom Kippur before Shabbat. It could work out because, when they did witnesses at testimony, we'll learn how that worked. When they did testimony for the new month, it could fall out. Yom Kippur could fall out on a Friday. So, Rabbi Yishmael said the Kedusha of Yom Kippur is less than Yom Kippur, Kedusha of Shabbat. That's what he says. The Bartudu says, Tefisha Shabbat Chamor b'Yom Kippur. Shabbat is more significant than Yom Kippur. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yishmael, I'm allowed to do Achana from Yom Kippur to Shabbat. Similarly, Chalbei Shabbat Krivin b'Yom Kippurim. If I have Shabbat, they offer the korbanot of Shabbat. So very often, what they would do is they would do the chelev, the fats in the Beit HaMikdash from the korban, and they would burn it at night. What happens if that night is Yom Kippur? So according to Rabbi Yishmael, since Shabbat is more significant, has greater stature, halachic status, therefore you can take the fats of the korbanot of Shabbat, offer them on Yom Kippurim. And then there's a girsa problem. Some say avalosha Yom Kippurim b'Shabbat, but you cannot do the fats of Yom Kippur on Shabbat. Losha Yom Kippurim b'Shabbat. Right, the Gadya doesn't have that girsa, but in either way, it would mean that you can't offer the fast of Yom Kippur on Shabbat because Shabbat is more chamor. Rabbi Akiva says, Lo shel Shabbat krevim Yom Kippurim, v'lo shel Yom Kippurim krevim Shabbat. No, their Kedusha is equal, and you cannot offer the fast of Yom Kippurim on Shabbat, nor can you offer the fast of Shabbat on Yom Kippur. And that's the Paskin. So when the Beit HaMikdash is rebuilt speedily in our days, and they reinstitute the new calendar, and it turns out that Yom Kippur could be either before or after Shabbat, we'll follow the position of Rabbi Akiva and not finish the burning of the fats from one to the other. We'll stop here. If you have any comments or questions, as always, feel free to email me at rspolter@gmail.com. And we'll dedicate the learning to the memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Have a great day.